At 8:07 a.m., Malcolm Hayes was losing his job while asking permission to finish one last repair. Claire Donovan looked from the wall clock to the man standing across from her desk. 7 minutes late. Again, Malcolm's navy work shirt was still damp at the shoulders, and a faint streak of grease crossed one cuff. He was breathing harder than usual, but he wasn't making excuses. That almost bothered her more. "Mr. Hayes, this is the third late arrival in 5 weeks. Claire's voice stayed level. She didn't need to raise it. Everyone in the room already knew what this meeting was. The HR manager beside her kept his eyes on the termination form. Malcolm glanced at the paper, then back at Claire. "Yes, ma'am. That was all. No argument. No story. No plea about rent, family, traffic, or bad luck." Claire leaned back slightly. She had spent the entire morning dealing with a delayed equipment shipment, 2 department heads blaming each other, and a board member demanding tighter accountability. Just an hour earlier, she had told management that repeated attendance violations would no longer be ignored. Rules meant nothing if they changed depending on who was standing in front of you. Still, something about Malcolm's silence made the room feel unfinished. "Is there something I should know?" she asked. Malcolm's eyes dropped for half a second. Not from shame. More like he was deciding whether the truth belonged here. Then he looked at her again. "Nothing that changes the fact that I was late." Claire's fingers rested on the pen. She had expected resistance. Instead, he had handed her the cleanest reason possible to let him go. She signed. "Your employment ends today." Malcolm nodded once. "Understood." The HR manager finally looked up. "You can turn in your badge and tools before you leave." Malcolm reached for the badge clipped near his chest, then stopped. "There's one thing." Claire's expression tightened. Here it came. The explanation. The request. The bargaining. But Malcolm pointed toward the maintenance wing instead. "The temperature control unit in pediatrics is still down. If I leave it halfway, that room could be 10 degrees colder by lunch." Claire stared at him. "You've just been terminated." "I know. And you still want to finish it?" Malcolm picked up his old tool bag from beside the chair. "The kids in that room didn't fire me." For the first time that morning, Claire had no immediate answer. She gave him 20 minutes. Malcolm finished in 17. He reset the unit, checked the vents twice, wiped his hands on a faded black rag, then folded his work shirt neatly over the top of his locker box. On his way out, a coworker caught up with him near the service elevator. "Malcolm, tell them why you keep being late." Malcolm pressed the elevator button. "Doesn't matter now. It matters if they got it wrong." The doors opened. Malcolm stepped inside. They didn't get the time wrong. The doors began to close. Then he added quietly, "They just never asked what happened before I got here." 20 minutes later, Claire reopened his attendance file. Buried beneath 3 red late marks was a schedule change request she had never seen, and one line made her stop cold. Recurring morning responsibility involving an elderly community volunteer. By the time Malcolm reached the street, the company badge was gone from his chest, but the habit of responsibility had not left with it. He stood beneath the awning for a moment, balancing the small cardboard box against his hip while buses rolled past the corner. Inside the box sat a coffee mug, 2 screwdrivers he had bought himself, a framed drawing from Zoe, and the faded black rag he had carried through nearly 6 years of maintenance calls. David Cole pushed through the lobby doors behind him. "You are seriously going to walk away like that?" Malcolm kept his eyes on the bus schedule. "Looks that way." "Then tell Claire what happened." Malcolm gave him a tired glance. "She asked why I was late. I told her I was late." David shook his head. "That is not the same thing." "No," Malcolm adjusted the box. "But I am not turning somebody else's trouble into an excuse for mine." David knew better than to push when Malcolm used that tone. It was not anger. It was a door closing gently. "You got Zoe tonight?" "Every night." "You need anything?" Malcolm gave a small smile. "A job would be useful." David laughed once, but Malcolm was already stepping toward the curb. A few feet from the bus stop, something blue caught his eye beneath the bench. A woman's wool glove. He stopped, picked it up, turned it over in his hand. His expression changed. "Barely, but enough." David noticed. "You know whose that is?" Malcolm brushed a little dirt from the cuff. "I think so." 20 minutes later, Claire was still staring at Malcolm's schedule request. She opened the attached notes. The request had been filed 14 days earlier and declined less than 3 minutes later. Automated staffing threshold. No supervisor review. Claire frowned. Malcolm had asked to begin at 8:15 instead of 8, offering to stay until 4:45. His department had no customer-facing duties before 9. The change would have affected almost nothing. Yet nobody had called him. Nobody had asked what elderly community volunteer meant. Claire clicked into his performance history. 6 years. Strong reviews. No complaints from coworkers. No safety violations. No missed shifts without notice. One supervisor had written, Malcolm stays when a job needs finishing, even when his shift does not. Claire leaned back. 3 late arrivals suddenly looked less simple than they had an hour earlier. Across town, Malcolm unlocked the door to his apartment at 4:12. Zoe was at the kitchen table doing fractions, one sneaker on, the other somewhere under the chair. She looked at the cardboard box in his hands and went still. Dad. Malcolm set it down carefully. Long day. Zoe studied his face the way children do when they already know the answer. Did you lose your job? Malcolm pulled out the chair beside her. Yeah, bug. She stared at the math worksheet. Because you kept helping that lady? Malcolm said nothing. Zoe looked up. The one at the food pantry. He exhaled slowly. That was my choice. But she needed you. Sometimes two things can be true. He tapped her pencil lightly. I can do the right thing for someone and still be responsible for being late. Zoe frowned. That does not sound fair. Malcolm looked toward the blue glove now resting beside his keys. Fair is complicated. At that exact moment, Claire's office phone lit up. The receptionist spoke softly. Your mother is downstairs, Miss Donovan. Claire closed Malcolm's file. She had no idea that the woman walking toward her office was the elderly volunteer named in it. Ruth Donovan never came to Claire's office without calling first, which was why Claire looked up the moment the door opened. Her mother stepped inside, carrying a square bakery box tied with white string and the same canvas tote she used for volunteer mornings. You skipped lunch again, Ruth said. Claire glanced at the clock. I had meetings. You always have meetings. Ruth set the box on the corner of the desk and rubbed one knee before sitting. Claire noticed the motion. Is it bothering you again? Only when I use it. That is not funny. Ruth smiled. It was a little funny. Claire tried to smile back, but her eyes drifted toward the employee file still open on her monitor. Malcolm Hayes. 3 late arrivals. 1 rejected schedule request. 6 years of strong reviews. The facts had not changed, yet somehow they no longer sat neatly beside each other. Ruth followed her daughter's gaze. Bad day. Complicated. That usually means you fired someone. Claire looked at her. Why would you say that? Because when you were 12, you used that exact face before telling me you had thrown away every shirt you owned because none of them fit right. Claire leaned back. I did not throw them away. You put them in 3 trash bags. That is different. Ruth laughed softly, then opened the bakery box. Lemon bars. Claire's favorite. For a few minutes, they spoke about ordinary things. Ruth's church committee. A neighbor whose dog kept escaping. Zoe's school fundraiser was still 6 weeks away, though Claire did not know Zoe yet. Then Ruth reached into her tote and frowned. I lost one of my gloves this morning. Claire barely heard her at first. What color? Blue. Well, your father bought them for me years ago. Something shifted in Claire's chest. She turned away from the computer. Where did you lose it? Probably near the bus stop by the food pantry. I was unloading boxes before sunrise. Claire's eyes narrowed. You were unloading them yourself? Ruth gave her the look mothers save for questions they consider unnecessary. I am 70, Claire. Not porcelain. You have arthritis. And I have hands. Claire stood, suddenly restless. You should not be lifting boxes alone. Ruth's expression softened. I usually am not. Claire stopped. What does that mean? Ruth took a lemon bar, but did not eat it. There is a man who comes by most mornings. He helps with the heavy things. Sometimes he fixes whatever has decided to stop working that day. Door hinge. Cartwheel. Coffee machine. Claire felt the room grow quieter. A volunteer? Not officially. Does he work there? No, Ruth shook her head. He has a job somewhere downtown. He is usually in a Navy maintenance shirt. Always checking the time because he has a bus to catch. Claire did not move. The words landed one at a time. Navy shirt. Downtown. Bus. Morning responsibility. Ruth finally noticed the expression on her daughter's face. What is it? Claire slowly turned the monitor toward her. Malcolm's employee photo filled the screen. Ruth stared at it. Her hand stopped halfway to the bakery box. The color drained from her expression, replaced by something Claire could not read. Mom, Ruth leaned closer. Where did you get his picture? Claire's voice came out quieter than she intended. He worked here. Ruth looked at her daughter. Worked? Claire hesitated. Until this morning. Ruth did not blink. Claire, what did you do? Claire did not answer right away. Ruth watched her with the stillness of someone who already knew the answer would hurt. I terminated him this morning, Claire finally said. Repeated tardiness. Ruth's eyes stayed on Malcolm's photograph. How late? 7 minutes today? Similar issues twice before. And you asked him why? Claire hesitated. That hesitation said enough. Ruth leaned back slowly. You asked him if there was something you should know. He chose not to explain. Of course he did. Claire frowned. What is that supposed to mean? Ruth looked almost disappointed, but not angry. Somehow that was worse. It means Malcolm does not advertise kindness like. It is a receipt he expects someone to reimburse. Claire folded her arms. Mom, I manage nearly 400 employees. I cannot build policy around stories I do not know. No, but you can ask better questions before you decide you know the whole story. Claire's jaw tightened. She had heard criticism from investors, attorneys, competitors, even her own board. None of it landed like that. Ruth reached into her tote and pulled out a folded grocery list. 3 mornings ago, the delivery truck came early. We had 22 boxes sitting outside, and my knee was bad. Malcolm missed his bus helping me get every box inside. Claire said nothing. Last Thursday, the wheel on my walker locked near the curb. He knelt down with a little tool from his bag and fixed it. Missed another bus. Ruth's voice softened. And 2 weeks ago, I got lightheaded before we opened. He sat with me until I felt steady, bought me orange juice, then called the pantry director to make sure I was not alone. Claire looked back at the attendance record. The dates matched. Exactly. Ruth continued, quieter now. He helps me every morning, Claire. Not because I asked. Not because he knows who you are. He does not even know my last name. The office seemed to lose its usual sharp edges. Claire stared at the red marks on the screen, each one suddenly attached to a scene she had never imagined. A missed bus. A broken walker. A woman sitting dizzy in an empty pantry. She remembered Malcolm standing across from her desk, refusing to turn any of it into a defense. Why would he not tell me? She asked. Ruth looked at her daughter carefully. Maybe because he believes doing the right thing should still count even when nobody important is watching. Claire looked away. Her phone buzzed with a message from the board. She ignored it. Another came. She ignored that too. What time does he usually get to the pantry? Around 6:30. Every day. Most weekdays. Ruth's eyes narrowed. Why? Claire closed Malcolm's file, then reopened it. She pulled up his schedule request again. 8:15 start time. No operational conflict. Automatically denied. No manager review. No conversation. Claire read the line once more, then reached for her coat. Ruth stood. Where are you going? Claire picked up her car keys. I made one decision without seeing enough. She paused at the door. I am not making the next one the same way. The following morning, before sunrise, Claire parked across from the food pantry and saw Malcolm Hayes walking toward the entrance with a blue wool glove in one hand. Claire stayed in the car with both hands resting on the steering wheel. She had expected Malcolm to come for Ruth. Instead, he stopped beside the pantry door, unlocked a small utility cabinet with a key Ruth must have given him, and pulled out a folding cart. A delivery van was already parked at the curb. Boxes of canned soup, cereal, and bottled water were stacked near the entrance. Malcolm set the blue glove on top of one box, then went to work. He moved quietly. No wasted motion. No audience. Claire watched him lift the heavier boxes onto the cart and wheel them inside. A few minutes later, an older man arrived in a wheelchair. One front caster caught against the edge of the ramp. Malcolm noticed before anyone called for help. He walked over, crouched beside the wheel, and adjusted the loose bolt with a small wrench from his coat pocket. The man thanked him. Malcolm only smiled. You are good now, sir. That was all. No story. No mention of yesterday. No bitterness about losing his job. Claire checked the time on the dashboard. 6:42. If Malcolm had still been working for her, he would already be counting the minutes until his bus. Instead, he carried another box inside. Then another. Ruth appeared at the door wearing one blue glove and a look of surprise when she saw him. You came back. Malcolm held up the missing glove. You dropped this. Ruth took it carefully. I thought I lost it for good. Things have a way of turning up. Her eyes searched his face. Claire told me what happened. Malcolm looked down at the cart. I figured she might. You should have told her about me. He shook his head. That would have made this about who you are related to. Ruth went quiet. Malcolm added, I helped you because you needed help. That should be enough. From across the street, Claire felt the words more than she heard them. She had spent years learning how to measure performance, risk, deadlines, cost. Everything had a number. Everything could be tracked. But Malcolm was standing there proving that some of the most important things happened outside the system entirely. Ruth touched his arm lightly. What are you going to do now? Find work. And Zoe? She will be fine. Malcolm smiled, but Claire could see how tired he looked. She asked if I lost my job because I kept helping you. Ruth's face tightened. What did you tell her? That being kind does not cancel responsibility. And responsibility does not cancel kindness. Ruth looked down at the glove in her hand. You really believe both can be true? They have to be. Claire finally opened the car door. She crossed the street slowly, every step feeling more difficult than the last. Ruth saw her first. Malcolm turned. His expression did not change much, but the small warmth in it disappeared. Miss Donovan. Claire stopped a few feet away. Malcolm. He waited. She had rehearsed several explanations during the drive. Pressure from the board. Company policy. The timing of the shipment delay. Every one of them suddenly sounded like a way to protect herself. So she left them out. I came because I need to apologize. Malcolm glanced at Ruth, then back at Claire. You do not have to do that here. Yes, Claire said softly. I do. She took a breath. I made a decision based on what I could measure, and I never bothered to ask what I could not. Malcolm held her gaze. You asked. Claire nodded. I did, but I asked in a way that made the answer feel irrelevant. For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Not forgiveness. Attention. Claire continued. I want to make this right. Malcolm was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the one question Claire had not prepared for. Would you be standing here if the woman I helped was not your mother? Claire did not answer immediately. Ruth looked at her daughter, but Malcolm kept his eyes on Claire. He was not trying to embarrass her. That made the question harder. No, Claire said at last. I probably would not be standing here. Malcolm gave a small nod, as if honesty mattered more than the answer itself. Claire looked toward the pantry windows. Volunteers were beginning to arrive. Someone inside laughed as a stack of paper bags slipped sideways on a table. Ordinary people. Ordinary morning. Nothing in the scene cared that Claire ran a company. That is the problem, she continued. I should not need my mother to be involved before I decide to look closer. Malcolm rested both hands on the card handle. So what happens now? Claire had come prepared to offer him his job back. Full pay. Restored seniority. A later start time. She had even asked Human Resources to draft the paperwork before leaving home. 5 minutes ago, it had seemed fair. Now it felt too easy. I was going to ask you to come back today. Malcolm said nothing. But if I only fix this for you, then I am doing exactly what you just accused me of doing. His eyebrow lifted slightly. I did not accuse you of anything. You did not have to. Ruth hid a smile. Claire reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. Your schedule request should have been reviewed by a person. It was not. Your attendance history should have triggered a conversation before termination. It did not. If those systems failed you, there is a good chance they failed someone else. Malcolm studied her face. You are going back through all of them? Every similar case from the last 12 months. That could be a lot of work. Claire gave him a tired half-smile. I have been told I work too much. Ruth folded her arms. By several intelligent people. Claire ignored that. She looked at Malcolm again. I cannot promise what the review will find, and I will not create a rule that only applies to you because you happen to help my mother. Malcolm's shoulders loosened a little. It was the first sign that she had finally said something he trusted. That sounds fair. It might also mean you wait a few days before I can give you an answer. I can wait. Claire glanced at the worn tool bag near his feet. Can you afford to? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Malcolm's expression changed, but only slightly. That part is mine to handle. Claire understood the boundary. She nodded. Then I will handle mine. By 9:30 that morning, Claire was back at Donovan Medical with 3 human resources managers in the conference room. She asked for every attendance termination from the previous year, every denied schedule adjustment, and every request rejected automatically without supervisor review. The first hour produced 4 questionable cases. By noon, there were 9. One belonged to a single mother caring for a disabled brother. Another came from an employee whose bus route had changed after a city construction project. A third had requested a 20-minute shift adjustment for dialysis transportation involving his father. Claire stared at the list. Malcolm had not been an exception. He had been the first person whose story had forced her to notice the pattern. At 3:15, she signed a temporary hold on all attendance-based terminations pending human review. Then she called Malcolm. He answered on the fourth ring. "Hayes." "Malcolm, it is Claire Donovan." A pause. "Yes, ma'am." Claire looked at the new policy draft on her desk. "I have an answer for you now." Malcolm was quiet. "But it is not just about getting your old job back." Malcolm listened without interrupting as Claire explained what she had found. 9 cases. 9 people reduced to attendance marks before anyone had stopped to ask what those marks meant. "So you changed the policy?" he asked. "I changed the process," Claire said. "There is still accountability. People still have to show up. But now there is a conversation before a decision becomes permanent." Malcolm leaned against the kitchen counter in his apartment, one hand resting beside a stack of unopened job applications. Zoe was at the table pretending to do homework while listening to every word. "In my case?" he asked. Claire looked down at the paperwork on her desk. "Your termination has been reversed. Your back pay will be restored. Your seniority stays intact. And your schedule request was approved." 8:15 to 4:45. Malcolm was quiet. Claire could hear office noise behind her, keyboards, phones, a printer running. Somewhere down the hall. "There is one more thing," she said. "What is that?" "I want you back because your work record earned it. Not because of my mother." Malcolm glanced at Zoe. She had stopped pretending to read. "That matters," he said. "I know." Another pause. "Then I will come back." Zoe broke into a smile so fast Malcolm had to turn away before Claire heard him laugh. "Monday morning?" Claire asked. 8:15. "Do not make me regret approving that." Malcolm smiled. "I will try to survive the pressure." Claire almost laughed, but the sound surprised her enough that it came out softer than expected. Monday arrived quietly. No announcement. No welcome banner. Malcolm entered through the same employee door where he had walked out days earlier. The clock read 8:12. David spotted him first. "You are early." Malcolm held up his coffee. "Do not spread it around. I have a reputation." On his locker sat a new access badge and a plain white envelope. Inside was one handwritten line. "Welcome back. 8:15 works." Malcolm read it twice, then folded the note and placed it inside his wallet. Across the building, Claire watched the maintenance dashboard update. "Hayes, Malcolm. Active." She expected relief. Instead, she felt something closer to responsibility. Reversing one bad decision had been easy. Becoming the kind of leader who made fewer of them would take longer. Over the next few weeks, small things changed. Supervisors began meeting employees before disciplinary action. Shift requests stopped disappearing into automated queues. One employee moved his start time by 20 minutes so he could take his mother to physical therapy. Another switched to a later shift after her childcare arrangement changed. Productivity did not collapse. Deadlines did not disappear. The company kept running. Claire noticed that more than anything, the rules had not become weaker. They had become more human. Malcolm noticed changes too. Claire still walked fast, still answered emails at impossible hours, still expected people to know their jobs. But she had started asking one extra question in meetings. "What are we missing?" One Thursday evening, Malcolm stayed late to replace a faulty valve near the employee cafeteria. Claire passed with her laptop bag over one shoulder. "You know your shift ended 40 minutes ago." He tightened the valve and looked up. "You know yours ended 3 hours ago." Claire stopped. "Fair point." She looked at the tools beside him. "My mother says you still come by the pantry. Most mornings. Even now that you do not need an excuse." Malcolm wiped his hands on the faded black rag. "It was never an excuse." Claire nodded slowly. That answer stayed with her. Then she noticed a small photograph tucked inside the open top of his tool bag. Malcolm with a smiling girl about 10 years old. Claire pointed gently. "Your daughter." Malcolm followed her gaze. "Zoe. She looks like she runs the house." "She thinks she does." Claire smiled. "My mother would like her." Malcolm closed the bag. "My daughter would probably adopt your mother in 5 minutes." Claire looked at him for a moment longer than necessary, then said, "The pantry is holding a volunteer day Saturday." Malcolm raised an eyebrow. "You volunteering?" "Apparently my mother has decided I need supervision." He smiled. "She might be right." Claire started toward the elevator, then turned back. "Bring Zoe." Malcolm watched the doors close behind her. unaware that Saturday would be the first time Claire saw him not as an employee she had misjudged, but as a father. Saturday morning felt different because Malcolm was not wearing a Donovan medical uniform, and Claire was not standing behind a desk. Zoe noticed that before either of them did. She walked into the pantry carrying a box of colored labels and looked Claire up and down. "You are the boss lady?" Claire glanced at Malcolm. "That depends who you ask." Zoe pointed toward Ruth, who was organizing canned goods near the front table. "She looks more like the boss." Ruth heard her and laughed. "Smart girl." Malcolm tried not to smile. Claire failed completely. For the next hour, nobody talked about work. Zoe sorted cereal boxes by expiration date. Malcolm repaired a loose shelf in the storage room. Ruth directed volunteers with the confidence of someone who had been doing it for years. Claire started at the registration table, but within 20 minutes she had taken off her blazer, rolled up her sleeves, and was carrying grocery bags to waiting cars. Her phone buzzed twice in her pocket. Then 3 more times. Malcolm noticed. "You going to get that?" She looked at the screen, then turned it face down on a folding table. "Not everything is urgent just because it makes noise." Malcolm nodded slowly. "That sounds new." "It is." Zoe appeared between them holding 2 cans of green beans. "Dad says that about the smoke detector when the battery gets low." Malcolm stared at her. "Zoe." Claire laughed. Not the polite laugh she used in meetings. A real one. Zoe grinned like she had accomplished something important and walked away. Later, Ruth asked Malcolm to help move a cart near the back entrance. Claire followed with a stack of paper bags. She watched him stop halfway across the room when Zoe struggled to open a cardboard box. He did not take it from her. He showed her where to press the seam, then waited while she tried again. When the box opened, Zoe looked pleased with herself. "You could have done that in 2 seconds, Claire said after she walked away. Malcolm shrugged. "Then she would know I can open a box." And now she knows she can. Claire looked toward Zoe, then back at him. Something in her expression softened. "You are good at that." "At boxes?" "At letting people keep their dignity." Malcolm did not answer right away. "Everybody needs that." Claire looked down at the paper bags in her hands. "Even people who get things wrong." Malcolm met her eyes. "Especially them." The words stayed between them, simple and unforced. Around noon, volunteers sat together for sandwiches and coffee. Zoe was telling Ruth a long story about a science project when Claire found herself sitting across from Malcolm. No human resources manager. No performance file. No reason to speak carefully. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You usually do." Claire ignored the tease. "Why did you never tell me about my mother? Not even when your job was on the line." Malcolm wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. "Because helping her was not evidence for my defense." Claire went still. Malcolm continued. "If kindness only counts when it can save me from consequences, then it is not kindness anymore." Claire looked at him for a long moment. "You really believed losing your job was better than using her name?" "I believe she deserved to be treated like Ruth, not like the chief executive officer's mother." Claire glanced toward her mother, who was laughing with Zoe near the window. For years, people had treated Ruth differently the moment they learned who her daughter was. Malcolm had somehow given her something Claire's money never could. Normalcy. Respect without calculation. Claire looked back at him. "I think I understand why she trusts you." Malcolm gave a small smile. "That is dangerous. She might start inviting me to holidays." "She probably already has." Ruth called from across the room. "Thanksgiving is at my house this year." Zoe answered before Malcolm could. "We can come." Malcolm closed his eyes. Claire laughed again, softer this time. Then Ruth added, "Claire, you should invite them yourself." The room seemed to quiet around Claire, even though nobody else had stopped talking. She looked at Malcolm, no longer certain where gratitude ended and something more personal began. Claire held Malcolm's gaze for a second, then looked toward Zoe and Ruth. "Thanksgiving," she said. "If you and Zoe do not already have plans, I would like you to come." Malcolm smiled. That sounded almost like a normal invitation. "I am practicing." "Then we would be glad to." Thanksgiving became the first of several small moments that changed the shape of their relationship. Nothing dramatic, nothing rushed, just dinners, pantry mornings, school stories, coffee after long shifts, and conversations that lasted a little longer than either of them expected. Claire learned that Malcolm had been studying at night for a facilities management certification. Malcolm learned that Claire had spent most of her adult life believing that if she stopped controlling everything, something important would fall apart. Months passed. Malcolm completed the program. Then one Tuesday afternoon, he received an offer from a hospital network across town. Facilities supervisor. Better pay. Better benefits. More responsibility. He carried the letter into Claire's office and placed it on her desk. She read it carefully. This is a good offer. It is. Are you taking it? Malcolm hesitated. I wanted to tell you first. Claire looked up. Why? Because coming back here mattered. She leaned back, quiet for a moment. Malcolm expected a counteroffer. More money. A promotion. Some reason to stay. Instead, Claire folded the letter and handed it back. You should take it. He studied her face. That easy. No, she smiled faintly. But you do not owe this company your future because we finally learned how to treat you properly. Malcolm looked down at the letter in his hand. That might be the best thing you have ever said to me. I was hoping the apology would rank higher. It was close. 2 weeks later, Malcolm left Donovan Medical on his own terms. David hugged him near the service elevator. Zoe helped carry his box. Claire stood back and let him have the moment without turning it into something about her. A month later, the food pantry opened a new accessibility ramp paid for through community donations. Ruth cut the ribbon. Zoe held the scissors case. Malcolm checked the railing one last time, tightening a loose bolt near the bottom. You know they hired someone for that, Claire said behind him. Malcolm turned. She was holding 2 cups of coffee. Bad habit. She handed him one. Black. No sugar. You remembered. I pay attention sometimes. Malcolm looked toward Ruth and Zoe laughing near the entrance. Claire followed his eyes. You are not my employee anymore. I noticed. She took a breath. For once, there was no title in her voice. No authority. Just Claire. Would you have dinner with me Friday? Malcolm raised an eyebrow. Is this a business meeting? Absolutely not. Then what time? 7. He glanced at his watch. I will be early. Claire laughed, and Ruth heard it from 20 feet away. She looked over, saw the two of them standing together, and smiled without saying a word. Malcolm had lost a job because of 7 minutes. Claire had nearly lost the chance to understand the man behind those minutes. In the end, both of them gained something better than being proven right. They learned to see each other clearly. Maybe that is the real lesson here. Rules matter. Responsibility matters. But numbers, schedules, and records never tell the whole story of a person. I think respect begins when we stop asking only what someone did and start asking what they were carrying when they did it. Kindness does not erase accountability, and accountability should never erase humanity. If you were in Claire's place, would you have made the same decision? And if you were Malcolm, would you have gone back? Share your thoughts in the comments. If stories about dignity, second chances, and quiet kindness mean something to you, subscribe and stay with us for the next one.